Now, moving forward to Paragraph, where did you get the idea? When did the Paragraph idea start?
Yeah, so I've been interested in the intersection between media and technology for a little while as well. I think shortly after I started getting into Bitcoin, I think 2012 or 2013, I was a small contributing editor at a tech publication called Benchmark Reviews. Reviewed computer hardware, software, just wrote a handful of different tech articles. Very early on, I was also kind of interested in sort of the editorial process and how it overlapped with technology. Paragraph specifically got the idea while I was at Google. I wanted to start writing more seriously myself and growing a personal audience and kind of growing a personal brand. This was during the pandemic, had a lot more free time. I was working from home and, it was a global pandemic. So I kind of assessed the current sort of state of publishing online. I think there's short form publishing. Twitter, X, effectively own the space for short form publishing. And Substack, I think, was kind of the de facto player, as you know, having been on Substack before for long form content. I quickly realized, there's a handful of concerns I had with the state at the time, but also the direction that a lot of these products were going. The first, I didn't think the paid subscription model was a great fit for everyone necessarily. I had a full-time job. I didn't want to publish on an ongoing basis. I didn't want to sort of have an obligation to churn out content regularly. It's also relatively challenging, I think, to come up with ideas and sort of produce high-quality content on a very frequent cadence. And, I didn't want to do this as my full-time job. I just wanted to put out sort of great content out there and then get rewarded for some of the content that I produce whenever I felt inspiration or whenever I wanted to. I also saw that I think very often there's a tension between reach and monetization. Like on Substack, the way to monetize right now is you need to paywall your content. So I wanted to get my content in front of as many people as possible. I didn't want to paywall it, right? That's effectively doing the opposite. You're alienating some level of your audience and you're reducing kind of the valuable content that could get disseminated and propagated, throughout the internet. So I thought like maybe there's a better way, I think, to do this. The second kind of concern that I had, I think, with more so the direction that a lot of these platforms were going, I didn't think they enabled as full control over my audience as I would want, ideally. I think a lot of the promises that some of these platforms came out with was, you'll always own the email list. You'll always own kind of the direct relationship with your audience. But I think over time, it's very, I think, lucrative for a platform to start developing their own network effects and then start, launching follows and then not email subscribers. So then you actually cannot export follows. It needs to happen on the platform. And even from like sort of an extensibility standpoint, a lot of these platforms don't have API access. So you cannot simply extend it or programmatically export things. If you wanted to offer, for example, Discord access to your subscribers, rather than doing it on the platform, like you just cannot do so. There's no API access. And I'm a developer, been coding for over 10 years. So, having this type of extensibility and API access in particular, I think is very important to me. I also, kind of the last problem that I identified, I struggled with growth, as I think a lot of creators do. A lot of people enjoyed the content that I was producing, but there's not really any real incentive for them to help me grow. They didn't really feel kind of ownership. They didn't have any stake in my creations. They certainly didn't have any sort of notion of shared success. Me, from like the reader's perspective as well. I was a paid subscriber to Lenny Rachitsky and a handful of other newsletters, and I forwarded them to my friends and family, and then got them to sign up for paid subscriptions. But didn't really get any upside, or didn't really sort of feel that I was getting sort of compensated or rewarded necessarily for distributing this content. Those were kind of the areas of concern, I think, that I identified. And then having been in the crypto space for a while, I thought like, using a bunch of these crypto economic primitives that have existed and that are kind of emerging at the time, like, is there a way where we could, reduce the obligation or need for a creator to produce content on a very regular basis? Could we reduce the reliance on a company needing to expose APIs? If content is stored permissionlessly and anyone can ingest it at any point, then like you don't even need to expose an API. Anyone can extend the product. And then can we do some novel things with incentives to help creators grow quicker than they could on sort of traditional platforms, either through crypto economic incentives or potentially through, a handful of other things. So then that kind of developed into what Paragraph is today.